on.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am joined today with Perry Kamel.
Absolutely.
Yes, how's my inflection?
Good job.
Yes.
Well done.
Thank you, sir. And Gary Miller. Listen, guys, it's a pleasure, obviously, to talk to you today. And I know we're about to talk about some technology and some interesting things within not just sports, but those who want to get better, feel better, and achieve more. So with that, Perry, why don't you tell us who you are and what you're dedicated to?
Yeah, happy to do that, Will, and thanks. It's great to be with you. My name, Perry Kamel. I'm the founder and CEO of DNA Vibe. We're a pretty cutting-edge technology that focuses on stimulating molecular excitation of DNA to boost the body's natural regenerative processes. Pretty amazing stuff, to be honest. I'll try not to get too nerdy and too deep into some of the esoteric technologies, but the greatest thing about it has been the stories of all the lives that have been leveled up, whether it's elite athletes upping their game or whether it's grandparents or even young kids just leveling up their lives.
We will definitely be touching on the esoteric part. Don't worry, we'll reserve some adequate time for that as well. But Gary, you obviously have an excellent pedigree as well. Why don't you tell us a bit about you?
Well, thank you very much, Will, for having us on this podcast. This is exciting. I come from the skiing world. My background as a national team coach for the U.S. I did the men's downhill team back in the 80s, where Bill Johnson was the first to win an Olympic gold medal in downhill. And I also coached Tommy Moe, who was Olympic champion in Lillehammer. And then I had a time where I went and raised a family and did other things and came back to the women's team back in 2014 and 15 and was with Michaela Schifrin. And so I have a long history as a competitor and a coach. And of course, when it comes to sports at that level, to have products that are, technologically advanced, our product, the human charger, which you'll learn about, has been sleeping in Europe for over 10 years. And it's just, we found it last year on a ski trip, believe it or not, in Austria. And tried it for a couple of weeks, fell in love with it, and said, this has to come to the U.S. And, it's sports, right? We need an advantage anywhere you can get it.
Mm. Yeah, that's so true. Obviously, coming from my field, obviously as a professional soccer player, footballer, there is no limit to the amount of things that one gets offered or that are talked about for getting an edge. An inch matters here within professional sports or Olympic sports or anything, And so I can't say that I've tried them all. I've been blessed to be in a position, and to play with some good clubs who have had access to things that the normal average player just would not. And so I've seen some very interesting things. And in fact, our very first podcast was with someone who was studying the things that in the front edge, of this sort of technology and stuff like that. So I'm very curious. We've already mentioned the human charger. Is that a good place, Perry, for us to start, to get an idea of what is capable with this technology?
Yeah, I think it's a fine place to start, but let me just kind of position it this way, right? So when we think about matter and energy, I like to remind people, things can be pretty simple. In the entire known universe, there's only two things. There's matter and energy. And essentially, they only interact in two ways. Energy either bounces off or it sticks and gets absorbed. So when we think about the light energy, electromagnetic energy more precisely, it has an effect at the molecular domain, the cellular domain, the systemic domain, and the cognitive domain. And so Gary and I first connected because what DNA Vibe does is very much focused on the molecular domain, specifically the molecular excitation of DNA, the DNA molecule, which is the one thing in our body that stimulates and governs regenerative healing. Gary's human charger is really focused on the cognitive level. And when you put the two together, you end up with a perfect balance, a reinforcing dynamic that helps elevate the mind-body connection. With cognitive therapies, bright light therapy, but in a much more sophisticated and useful form, as in the human charger, you're really helping normalize and adjust, and in many cases, reset the circadian rhythm. This is fundamental to our lives. It governs when we wake, when we go to sleep, when we're hungry. It's so many different things. Anybody who's ever been on a lengthy international flight knows when you land on the other side, you're just not yourself. You can feel the effects in fatigue, but there's so many other ramifications. Loss of mental clarity. Your mood is not as high. Your sense of calm and confidence is not as high. So many aspects are governed by our cognitive wellness. And so with the human charger, you're basically stimulating neuroreceptors and optical receptors in the brain to help reset the circadian rhythm and normalize our function. You can go on a long international trip, land on the other side, and feel energized, clear-headed, good mood, positive attitude, all of those things that, we talk about elite athletes. When you're traveling around the world, you want to be fully there. You want to be at your peak performance. And a lot of that is cognitive, right? We talk about flow, and we talk about when you're just in that groove and you almost feel like you can walk on air. That's all driven by our cognitive processes. So the human charger helps bring that to life for us. Now, I like to remind people, hey, you may not be an elite athlete, right? But don't we all want to live at our peak? Don't we all want to have that feeling of wellness and vitality? Of course we do. I think an inch matters more in pro sports, but as a typical, consumer, I'll take that inch every day if it just makes me feel better and able to enjoy a higher quality of life. Now, add to that the DNA Vibe, where we're literally stimulating the excitation of the DNA molecule. I think this is one of the most exciting scientific breakthroughs of our time. I was once doing a presentation for 500 surgeons, and I put a big slide up on the Jumbotron, and it was the DNA molecule, the double helix. If you picture that in your mind, it's basically traces a sine wave. So the title of the slide was, "It's a Sign!" Well, 500 doctors looked at that yawning, not a single eyebrow was raised, and I'm like, whatever, tell me something I don't already know. We all know what the DNA molecule looks like, right? Well, then I overlaid on top of the DNA molecule what's called a Marconi pattern. Marconi was the inventor of the radio, Italian scientist, came up with this amazing invention called the radio. He also proved that all energy of any kind can only travel in, guess what? A sine wave. So energy travels in a sine wave. Our DNA molecule is shaped like a sine wave. There's a reason for that. You don't have to be a quantum particle and optical physicist to understand the implications of what that means. But essentially, when the energy wave matches the recurring pattern of the DNA molecule, it stimulates a state of excitation, and that state of excitation triggers a state change. And guess what? DNA turns on and accelerates the rate of rebuilding the body. So what we're really doing is nothing more than boosting the body's natural regenerative processes so that we can actually heal better, we can heal faster, we can recover more fully. And when you do that on the front end of training or competing, you can also mitigate the risk of injury because your body is tuned up and ready to perform at its best. Now, here's where it gets exciting, quite literally. When you put maximum physiological health together with maximum cognitive health, you have an incredibly synergistic effect. I'm feeling like I can jump 6 feet vertical. I'm feeling like I can walk on air. I'm confident. I have peace. I'm in the zone. And my body is working fully. I don't have those nagging aches. I don't have those stiff complexes. So when you put the two together, it really becomes a synergistic combination. And again, Will, as a pro soccer star, you can probably know exactly the experience I'm talking about. That game when you walk out there and you just feel fully alive. Well, guess what? Moms, dads, grandparents, and kids can feel that way too.
That's incredible. actually. And of course, everybody knows the feeling of being in flow. Even if you're not an athlete, to be perfectly honest, everybody kind of gets you have that feeling when things are going right, whether that's in your job, relationships, and obviously before getting into an interesting question for me, at least, being what else can be done, or what kind of conclusions we can draw from something like this that is exciting our DNA. What about the side effects? This is something, all athletes, when they worry about a supplement, taking something, or whether that's, just taking a pill, taking a new plant, taking a new something, they're always worried about what else it could do. So is this one of the types of products that has escaped that horrible feeling that, oh my God, I do this and I play well, but then, I have something, caffeine comes out to my mind. So yeah.
I love that question. So first of all, the DNA molecule is teeny tiny. Like, we're talking much, much smaller than even cells. And so to try to excite something of that small scale requires a tiny little whisper, not a shout of energy, right? The slightest bit too much energy is going to overwhelm that process. And so we are quite literally 20 times less powerful than the least powerful light device on the planet. People are buying light pads, right? You could buy them for $100 or whatever. They're 20 times more powerful. That's amazing. And so there are negative consequences to overexposing yourself with that much light. You don't want to do that. I wouldn't let my mom do that. But with ours, we're so gentle on purpose because of the focus on molecular stimulation. It's a whisper, not a shout. So there's no concept of overdoing that. I will say, though, we had an interesting side effect. About 2.5 years ago, we have about 4,000 clinical practices that are using the technology now in clinic and referring to their patients, right? So one of the doctors wrote us a very long email, and he said, hey, my patients are having great results for localized recovery, but they're also reporting that they're sleeping better at night, they're feeling less stressed and anxious throughout the day, they're having regular, healthier bowel movements. And my founding partner, Dr. Max, he and I looked at this. He's a professor of genomics and molecular biology. We looked at that feedback, and I'm embarrassed to say we dismissed it as a fluke because it wasn't in our radar. It wasn't something we were anticipating. And so we politely said, hey, that's great, keep it up. About a month later, we got the same email from a different doctor. My patients are recovering great. They're having great experiences, and they're sleeping better, less stress and anxiety, all the whole thing, bowel function, etc. And then another doctor and another. It was like a rainstorm, right? We started getting all this feedback, totally unexpected. And so the doctors encouraged us to do a clinical trial on a vagal nerve application, right? The vagus nerve that kind of runs like right from the left jaw, center of the chest, like this, on the skin. We did a clinical trial with 12 Purple Heart battlefield wounded veterans who were struggling deeply on the complex PTSD spectrum. Within 30 days, they had a 50% reduction in daily stress and anxiety. So we had, I won't go into the whole detail of it, but it was really pretty amazing. So one of the side effects of using our technology anywhere around the torso, neck, back, shoulders, is it's also stimulating regenerative effects for the vagus nerve, which is the nerve that controls all of our autonomic function and our parasympathetic state. So it's improving neurological health as well. Pretty amazing results.
Yeah, I mean that's an incredible thing, because I was going to ask as well. I mean, we all know this, and I know this from helping players become pro, and we have our channel that's just for guys that are trying to get better at football or go pro within football. And reducing anxiety is actually one of the big things. Now, it was not when I was growing up. It was not a thing per se that was there. Clearly, with society, we've not done anybody any favors in the world that we've created necessarily, and anxiety is just like skyrocketed. And so that's one of those things that I know is a side effect of. It's a good thing, players and people in general need it.
I happen to sit on a local school board, and so I'm exposed to so much data about high school age teens, and it's really tragic. When we were in high school, we were, Friday night lights, we were having a great time with our friends, and You had a few conflicts between the heads and the jocks, but generally everybody was living life and feeling pretty good about it. Today, 80% of high school age teens self-report as being clinically depressed. Like, that is heartbreaking. And so this side effect that I told you about 2.5 years ago, we're now using that regularly with people who are dealing with stress and anxiety, all kinds of issues. And so many athletes, by the way, do this too. They'll do the jazz band for the Vegas effect, really helps settle them down. Relax, breathe every 5 seconds. We actually have a pulse that helps regulate the breathing cycle. Relax and do that for 10, 15 minutes, twice a day if you can, before game time. It's going to calm you down in addition to the human charger. And so there's a real nice synergy there. We're improving neurological function and health and wellness. We're improving cognitive function, health and wellness, and of course, physiological as well. It's one of my life passions. There's a guy, Gunny Mike, I'll just refer to him as Gunny Mike, blown off a tank in 2003, complex PTSD for 20 years, could not tolerate the sound of a refrigerator door closing. It would just trigger him. He called me a month ago, about a year after the clinical trial, and he said, guess what I did today? I went hunting with my buddies, right? Think about that. Brought a tear to my eye. 20 years of not being able to tolerate a car door closing, and now he's out shooting guns and having a great time with his buddies, right? That's what we're all about, is helping people live a better life, whatever their occupation and whatever their age.
You mentioned, obviously, some of the guys' routines within the clinical study, even throwing on the jazz band, throwing on the human charger, and then meditating. So that's a perfect segue for me to get into some of this kind of out there other elements of the products. So, if meditation is, as we fully well know, I think now as a society, that it's beneficial to us to get off our phones and quiet our mind and thoughts, how is this aiding that specifically, or how are both of these aiding them, together or individually to aid my meditative practice, if I might say that? Is it, because as a lucid dreamer, I'm not sure if any of you guys are familiar with lucid dreams or what they are, but that whole realm and field is filled with supplements you can take, lights that you can look into, all sorts of flashing things that can help you either potentially even skip some of the hard work of obviously quieting your mind and having to get a dream journal and doing all this stuff, but they can aid you. They won't do the work for you, but they will be good aids. So what have you found? Just, it's a two-part question, Perry. It's what have you found within that, and what would be a good regimen if you could just whittle it down to I know you've mentioned it a few times, but what would be a good daily routine for someone just wanting to enhance with both products?
Yeah, great questions. On the first one, how can this help the body, help our being cognitively, neurologically, physiologically with practices like meditation, relaxation, prayer, or whatever? There's so much exciting science that's going to be coming down the road, right? We know a lot, but we only know a small fraction of what's coming. So when I mentioned that the DNA molecule is a sinusoidal structure, that means quite effectively that it is designed, it has evolved to be essentially an antenna, right? From a quantum physics perspective, matter that has a recurring pattern, and particularly a sinusoidal pattern, is optimized for energy excitation. And remember how our friend Marconi proved that all energy travels in a sine pattern, right? Well, guess what? What is our brain constantly doing? Our brain is constantly emitting energy. That is very well established. In fact, medicine defines the point of death as the point when the brain is no longer emitting energy. What pattern is the brain energy traveling in? It's called sinusoidal. So there's a direct interaction between brain-body that we believe hinges on interaction between and among DNA molecules throughout our body and in our mind. This may sound a little bit off the beaten track. It is new. It's a new way of reflecting on why is the DNA molecule sinusoidal and what interaction might it have with energy that we ourselves are emitting. This is very early. It's a field of investigation that we're looking further and further into, but we believe you can actually train your mind when people are meditating. 10,000 years or more of human experience. People meditate and they pray for a reason, because they observe results when it comes to cognitive, neurological, and physiological health, the feeling of well-being and psychological wellness and mental wellness. They observe that, and so there must be a reason. We've taken the time to look into those types of interactions, what the traditions of Qi, the traditions of Reiki medicine and other energy medicines. You can either wipe away and dismiss 10,000 years of collective human experience, or you can look at it with curiosity and say, wow, what's going on there? Can I learn to relax and train my thoughts in a way that is beneficial and that will help lift my overall wellness? And in that sense, I think the human charger together with the DNA Vibe Jazz Band are helping to groom that discipline, helping us augment the results of those practices. So to your second question, whether you're a professional athlete or whether you're just, wanting to live a better life and be more healthy and active, get in the habit of doing 15 minutes, 12 minutes of human charger in a 15-minute jazz band session on the vagus nerve. Relax in a comfortable seat, breathe in time with the 5-second pulse pattern, and you will feel much more relaxed, much more alert, much more clear-minded. I think during your normal quiet time, when you're doing meditation or relaxing, if you haven't done that as a personal discipline, highly recommend it. Athletes for decades have known the power of calm visualization, right? And things of that nature. Do the human charger and do the jazz band as part of that. I personally like to do that twice a day. I've done the human charger with that. The combination is really pretty amazing. It will augment the results you get through those normal routines. I think where the jazz band can go a step further is when you have those nagging injuries or chronic conditions that are constraining you and kind of undermining your best intent, because pain can be a huge distraction. Put the jazz band on that trouble spot. Do that twice a day for 20 to 30 minutes. Do it every single day. And within about 10, 14 days, as the body begins to restore, you're going to see that that's not going to be as big an obstacle.
It reminds me of just a couple things. I mean, one is the fact that I know for people who have not potentially done meditation or gotten it in, we've talked a lot about society and things like that. Now, if you've never been a meditator, it's hard to convey the beauty and how necessary it is to have that practice, because when you're in this storm, you don't think you can stop, right? And so you can't, taking time off to just sit there with this on my chest and the human charger in my ears sounds like I'm avoiding, right? You get guys going, well, I want to go to the field, or I want to do something, and so sometimes it's hard for them to understand the correlation between, relaxing, getting the mind right.
Well, if I could say two things on that, because this is kind of a passion when I see what happened with, say, the Purple Heart veterans, for example. Nobody has a harder time calming down and establishing a healthy routine than somebody who has been deeply traumatized by complex PTSD. I remember when we started the trial, they were really kind of stressing about oh, wait, am I supposed to breathe exactly with the 5-second pulse? What if I'm off just a little bit? And, they're all stressed out about that. We said, hey, you know what? Chill, relax. You just need to be close enough. What ended up happening in their case is the routine with the jazz band enabled them to grab onto something tangible. So I don't have to just sit in a couch and try to meditate. What exactly does that mean, right? Where do I start? Maybe I could read a book, or maybe I can recite some verses, or you know what? Start with slap it on, relax, and breathe to the 5-second pulse. Just do that, right? It becomes almost like a habit metronome where they don't have to stress about what am I going to do. It is the routine, and it helps bring that pattern into your life. And so The fact that they're still doing it more than a year later, I think, is one of the huge benefits. How do you get people to adopt and stick to new healthy routines? Give them something tangible and specific to do. And I think that's been really fantastic.
Yeah, I'm also curious if have you heard of any of this, and I believe it's called brain coherence. Have you heard of any of these? For instance, you have binaural beats. I think the isochronic tones, I want to say as well. I'm not sure if you use them. I don't know any of the research behind them. I've dabbled with some of the binaural beats, but there is one out there that I swear by, let's say, which has to do with a man named Robert Monroe, who created something called hemisync. And it's, I believe, if I'm not messing up the words correctly, it was brain entrainment. And the reason I'm saying that is because as you do this, it requires consistency. You always will still have to do the work, right? You can't just, put it on and then go do whatever you want to do. You have to sit there. You have to, pay attention and do that. As you do the process, whether that's 7 days, 10 days, 2 weeks, sometimes less, you do start to actively feel something different as you're even doing the process. So I'm curious, do you feel anything? Would a potential person who's doing this, would they feel anything while the human charger is going on? Or, while they have the jazz band on, are they feeling any sensations? Or is this just okay, after these 3 weeks are up, like I see how far I've come, and how much better I feel, et cetera.
Yeah, so I'll put it to you this way. The jazz band, when used for pain or injury recovery or anything like that, there are two forms of relief. One is immediate, and then one is over a period of time as the body recovers and the root cause of the stiffness or pain is resolved. The immediate happens in really 3 stages. The instant you put the jazz band on an achy tennis elbow or a sore low back, the instant you put it on, you feel relief because it has built-in nerve gating. There's a 13,000 VPM microvibration with a randomized oscillation. So you have a sensation like, that tricks the brain and distracts the brain from the pain signals so that it's kind of trying to figure out what the heck is that new signal. This is not high science. I mean, look, when we bump our head, we rub our head, right? You bump your elbow, you rub your elbow. We are wired when we feel pain to introduce an alternative signal to distract the brain. We feel relief for that moment, but then the brain goes back once it figures out what's going on. So we randomize it, keep the brain entrained on that new signal. That really brings a lot of people relief. We have people who have acute, chronic, continuous pain who do that all day long just because it gets them through the day and the night. The other thing that happens is the vibration. When you combine vibration with pulsing, you break fluid bonds, right? And perfect example of that, we call it the Heinz ketchup technology. When you're trying to get ketchup out of a glass ketchup bottle, you shake the bottle and then you pound on it, right? You shake and you pound. So when you vibrate and you pulse, same thing. It's kind of like Fluid Dynamics 101, you break fluid bonds and fluids can flow through the area more easily, lymphatic and interstitial and other non-vascular fluids, and that decongests and decompress and helps eliminate some of that feeling of stiff achiness that you may have. So that happens usually within the first 5 minutes, and then you've got blood flow increasing and oxygenation. You have a non-thermal production of ATP, ATP being cellular energy, and that can bring the tissues to life and you feel more vital. It's important to note it is non-thermal, right? So you go blast one of those huge light pads with tons of lights on it, you're going to get thermal expansion of vessels, you're going to get thermal inducement of ATP. You might do that once a week. I wouldn't do that every day. That's not kind of good for the body. Once you get the blood flow, the oxygen, the ATP, you're really starting to feel much better. I would say the one footnote on that, sometimes you feel so good, you forget you're injured, right? So you got to be a little bit mindful of that. If you've got a tennis elbow or a golfer's elbow or whatever the case is, you put the jazz band on, within 15 minutes, you feel like, oh, wow, I'm all better. Now I'm going to go lift some heavy boxes. You don't want to do that. Be grateful for feeling better, but give your body the time it needs to fully recover. And that's going to be in the 10 to 14 day range, daily use every single day, 20 to 30 minutes, morning and afternoon, and you will see the underlying cause resolve. For people who are interested in learning more or picking up a jazz band, I will say we may be the only company who does this. I don't know. I haven't heard of any others. We guarantee that each product is going to help you with the issue you hope to resolve, right? We don't just guarantee it's going to function. That's a standard manufacturer's warranty. By the way, we do manufacture in Colorado. We're very proud of that. But we guarantee if you're getting it to try to help with your knees or your neck or your low back or your shoulder, whatever your issue, or just to get that calm relaxation of the vagal protocol, if it doesn't help you, you'll get a full refund. No questions asked, right? We're confident, but we also care. And so to try it out, check it out at dnavibe.com, dnavibe.com, and then I'll kick it over to Gary for the human charger.
Yeah, we took distribution of the human charger. Like I said, it has never been available in the U.S. For whatever reason. But we took distribution of it, and we have a website, humancharger.us, and we will be carrying this bundle, this high performance bundle, which is a combination of the human charger and the jazz band, which I think honestly will really revolutionize the way athletes look at sport. And we're going to do an experiment with some collegiate athletes, because as a collegiate athlete, I think they face more demands often than some of the professional athletes, because they've got to maintain that grade point in school. They're studying, they've got final exams, and it's absolutely essential to stay on top of your game. So I think with this bundle, I'm confident that this bundle will be a huge aid for them to keep their bodies and their minds sharp with consistent use.
And what I will do, as a matter of fact, I went to St. Louis University. I only went for a year and a half, and then I went pro to play in Chicago. But just you mentioning that reminds me of how wild some of the trainings and stuff. I was a biology major, as a matter of fact, as well, and it's taken a lot of hours. And then you have games like 3 times a week. It just seemed like it's a whirlwind. It was just a whirlwind of stuff happening. And they just reached out. I know the alumni game is coming up. I won't be able to go, but I know as the spring season comes around, that is this would be a cool thing. I will reach out and just say, hey guys, this is, we still hold the record as the most championships for all in the NCAA. And so I know they're always also looking for an edge, and obviously given the restrictions that they have, even more than I think that we do at the pro level and many things, looking for things that are going to give them an edge that are like this, holistic, natural, and not to destroy them.
Well, when you think about it too, Will, with all the conference realignments today, these athletes are traveling more than they ever did. And then the NFL just came out, a week ago and said that, they're trying to expand this presence in Europe. And now they've got 3 games in Europe this year. But by 2030, I think they predict 16 games. And, that's a lot of travel. And, you have to do things to keep that edge.
Perry, Gary, guys, very much appreciate it. Can't wait to try this stuff out. We will have to do this some other time as well when I've got my own feedback, and then we'll come back on and maybe talk a bit about what I've learned.
Sounds awesome, Will. Thank you very much.